So how was your week?
It's been an interesting week, Evan.
I'd like to hear about it, please. I've read about it. I'd like to hear about it from the horse's mouth.
Let me lay something out right off the top.
Yeah.
And then I want to talk about why we've had an interesting week, because that's what's really important. Everything that Senator Carona has said, let there be no doubt, no question, unwarranted, unfounded, untrue. Scurrilous attacks made on me and my family in a fashion that even some of the most hard-boiled political observers have never seen. When you attack a person's wife, when you impact his mother and his children, any man in this room is going to stand tall and defend them. These are absolute lies that he either made up or he has taken pleasure in repeating and continues to repeat. They're false, they're scurrilous, they're vicious, they're mean, and this is the type of behavior that makes a lot of people say, I don't think I want to go into politics. It's a time to test your faith. I've been a little surprised that some of the media have even poked fun at me for my faith. But there are a lot of people in here who are believers, a lot of people who have prayed the Lord's Prayer, and you say, forgive us our trespasses and those who forgive and those who trespass against us. When we ask forgiveness for forgiveness, we don't ask for forgiveness for the little things in life. It's for all things in life. And we are commanded to do the same. It's not easy, but my wife and I forgive John. I pledge to work with him because the issues of Texas are bigger than his temper tantrums and his malicious behavior. But he still owes my wife an apology, and he owes my family an apology. My mom is 85 years old, folks. She had a heart attack not long ago. And she gets up and reads this vile trash in the newspaper when there's no truth to it, no evidence. I've been married for 37 years. I love my wife and she loves me. Period, end of story.
How did it get in the newspaper, Senator?
Because someone leaked it, not me.
You had nothing to do with it ending up
not.
On the quorum report, nothing to do with it getting out in public.
Do you think I would want that to get out in the public?
Well, I think
do you think I would want his
Senator,
vile attacks out?
one question that a lot of people have in here is how exactly did this end up in the hands of the media? Why did this get circulated the way that it did? Why did it not begin, Senator, with simply a phone call by you to Senator Carona as opposed to an email distributed to the full body?
You all read his response. Do you want to talk to someone who would write the things he wrote? I didn't want a confrontation with him.
You're an enormously smart guy, Senator. You know that the E in email stands for everybody. If you commit something to writing and you distribute it among the 31 members of the Senate, you have to believe it's going to get out.
If I made a mistake in this, it was believing that emails between senators, which are almost always private, would have stayed private. I don't know who made it public, but it was made public. And his response was an admission of guilt.
How was it an admission of guilt?
Oh, I wouldn't.
I read it. I think you could very easily read it as a denial of guilt. I'd like to understand how you think it's
the opposite.
An admission of guilt.
Look, we're going to go on to the why, and I want to talk about Texas. That's why you invited me here.
As do I, but I'd be foolish not to go here
But very
first.
quickly, he says, I'm not shy about my dislike, sharing my dislike, my distrust that I've always had. I've heard these rumors. Suddenly he wouldn't say them, he repeats them, and he adds another vile comment. Vicious. So it's...
He saw you and raised you.
Absolutely. So let's move on to the why. Okay, let's move on to the why. What's really at stake? What's at stake here is competing visions. Competing visions. I have a vision that people, the grassroots, the people who send us here, should have a major say in what we do. He does not. Over 3 sessions and 13,000 votes that I've cast, arguably I have the most conservative record, or one of the most conservative records. John's a moderate. Competing visions. I've talked for months, because I believe David Dewhurst is going to win, probably without a runoff, about this process of selecting the presiding officer. And I believe it should be the majority of Republicans selecting the presiding officer, not 12 Democrats and 4 Republicans. John has a different view. He's been on the record talking about he doesn't think the caucus should have a major say. The Republicans are the majority. We should have the major say. What would be great to have a unanimous decision at the end, which I'm sure we'll have, but if it's 12 or 13 Republicans and 3 or 4 Democrats, that's a good mix. Not 12 Democrats and 3 or 4 Republicans. He has a different view. He has told senators very clearly last fall, make no mistake, that he has noticed more interaction in Senate business by the grassroots, the SREC, and the Tea Party, and he attributes that to me, and he doesn't like the interference. In his backyard, he probably does not like that in his backyard, I'm supporting grassroots candidates, he's supporting the opposite. I'm supporting Ken Paxton, a great conservative, great grassroots guy. He gave money to the opposition before he dropped out. I'm supporting Kelly Hancock, great grassroots guy. He's given $20,000 to the opposition. Go down the list, whether it's how we select the interim officer, what we stand for, who we support. It's a competing vision. I'm in his way. Yeah. He can't attack me on my record. So what's the
that's the why. That's the why. That's the why. So those of us who said this week, this is about lieutenant gubernatorial politics or presiding officer politics. You fully agree that that's what this is.
Yeah, and I have made very clear, I'm not interested in running for the interim position.
Are you prepared to say right now to this audience and to the world at large that you would not accept the job of presiding officer if the 31 senators came and said, oh, Senator Patrick, we must have you?
Absolutely not.
Would you say you will not take it?
Not only would I say it today, I've been saying it to many, some people in this
room. You will
program.
not be the presiding officer.
I will not be the
full
presiding
stop.
officer. Not interested. Wouldn't get the votes, probably, too conservative.
Forget that.
If 12 Democrats came to me tomorrow with 3 Republicans, I wouldn't take it.
So you would not do it?
It would be a coup d'etat of the Republican Party, and that's not what the grassroots people want. John is a dinosaur elected official who sees his moderate power shrinking. Look, the status quo of the Senate is changing dramatically. We're going to have the most conservative Senate that we've ever had in the state.
Right.
You know, 50% of the Senate is new virtually since I was elected. And after I came in, or with me, Robert Nichols, conservative, Glenn Hager, conservative, Brian Birdwell, conservative, Joan Huffman, conservative. We have 5 more conservatives coming. This is what John is upset about. I'm interested in government of the people. I founded the Tea Party caucus. We had an orientation to train people about how government works last session. About 300 folks came. The more people are involved in the process, the better government is. Competing visions, that's what this is about. That's all it's about.
So you think that Carona took an opportunity here to try to whack you in the knees over presiding officer politics? That's what you think this was about?
Absolutely.
Could it not be seen as the opposite way, Senator, that actually you took the opportunity to whack him for fear that he was beginning to gain some traction in his effort to be presiding officer?
Read what I wrote, the tone and the content, and read what he wrote.
So you had no desire in all of this to undermine Senator Carona in any way?
Let's be very clear, and let's move on to other issues, okay? Let's be very clear. I didn't start this fight.
Right.
I didn't spread any gossip. I didn't create any lies. Period. End of story. And I shouldn't even have to defend myself. I shouldn't. Okay, if there's the mistake, I believe that something would stay private. It didn't. Okay, so we move beyond that. I take my responsibility in that. But I have no responsibility in this vicious, scurrilous, unfair attack on my wife of 37 years. And I will not stand for it. And that's why I called him out. It was so vicious and so nasty. It hurt my wife so much that I took it to my fellow senators and said, this has to stop. And read my email for the civility of the Senate.
Well,
so,
I did read your email, and it referenced the fact that you were aware of what you say were these rumors spread by Senator Carona for as much as 2 months. Is that right?
Yeah, yes. And as I put in the email.
So why didn't you send the email 1 month and 30 days ago?
Because the first time a senator called me graciously and said, hey, Dan, I've heard this. I think you should know. I laughed it off. It was so ridiculous.
Right.
So absurd.
Yeah.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Have any senators come forward and say that?
Let me just finish. Yes. And then, when I was aware of him spreading this rumor 2 months later, and that was That's all I need. Let's talk about Texas, all right?
Well, Senator, you have a talk show host. When you have a guest, you ask the questions. I ask the questions here.
Sure.
My question to you is, if I asked you to, could you produce other senators in the body who would step forward and say on the record that they had heard that Senator Carona had spread these rumors?
I don't spread rumors. I don't reveal names. I don't talk. His response speaks for itself.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there any way to look at this week other than Senator L-Type 1?
Well, there are several senators who have been mentioned as potential presiding officers. He's one.
How do you feel about him?
I think he'd make a fine presiding officer, as several others would.
You're not prepared to support him necessarily in that?
He hasn't even announced he's running.
Yeah.
So
you have any doubt that he is?
I don't know. I don't speak for the senator.